I was asked, this has been about a year ago, um, to talk about when the Penguins were really bad. But I want to talk about more than just when the Penguins were really bad, because the Penguins were quite the story for quite a while. Um, a very successful franchise all of a sudden became unsuccessful, and worse than that, unprofitable. And a team that they came very close to moving. Now, in 1999, Mario Lemieux steps up and buys the team with Ron Burkle. Lemieux owns 40%, Burkle 25%. Lemieux puts $107 million into the team. And what's interesting is that at the time, he was owed $32 million by the franchise. Yeah, the franchise was in trouble and they were in bankruptcy. So Mario Lemieux says, all right, I'm taking this on. This is mine. Not only did Mario Lemieux bring the team out of bankruptcy, he paid every single person, every single corporation they were in debt to, 100 cents on the dollar. Bankruptcy, that's not supposed to happen. Bankruptcy, you go through that process so that you can pay off the people you're in debt to, paying maybe 30% of what you owe, maybe 40 at most. Lemieux said, I will pay everything, and he paid it all personally. And Mario Lemieux led a turnaround off the ice. Now, right now, if we look at stable franchises, and if we had to put on the board which teams are stable and which ones aren't, we'd say Pittsburgh is stable. The Pittsburgh Penguins, absolutely 100% stable. But it wasn't always that way. And under Mario Lemieux's leadership, they had some issues as well. So we're going to use the good old-fashioned hockey annuals. That's Curtis Joseph of the Toronto Maple Leafs there. And go into the Robo Penguin years, which will end up with that logo as well. The Lemieux years enter second phase. If not for Mario Lemieux, this could have been the Portland Penguins preview. But the retired Hall of Famer scored one of the greatest triumphs when he pulled the Pittsburgh Penguins out of bankruptcy, thereby rescuing the franchise for a second time. When Mario Lemieux's drafted to this team in '84, it turns the team around, or '83. His being drafted by Pittsburgh single-handedly turns the franchise around. He is arguably one of the two greatest players of all time. I say he's one of the two greatest players of all time, and if not for injury and back problems, we might be talking about how he's the greatest of all time. I'm just saying we might. He definitely would have been one of two players with over 2,000 points, likely at least 2,500. Lemieux's next mission is to lead the Penguins to a third Stanley Cup. The team's headed in the right direction, coming off a second consecutive successful season under coach Kevin Constantine. The Penguins again hit the 90-point mark and went a step further in the playoffs, upsetting the New Jersey Devils before falling to the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Eastern Conference Final. So that's the year prior to the one we're going to look at. The one we're going to look at is 99-2000. I'm just giving you guys an idea of how things were going into that season. Kevin Constantine, things are going well. Here's Constantine's statement. We didn't get to where we wanted to get, and we're always disappointed with that. We will be disappointed until we stand holding the cup. Lemieux expected to pursue some free agents this summer, but no matter who comes aboard, he can count on three men to provide a winning foundation. Constantine, Jaromir Jagr, and GM Craig Patrick are as good at their jobs as anybody in the league. However, even Yager's all-world play couldn't overcome the ravages of bankruptcy as the Penguins saw their average attendance, 14,825, drop to its lowest point since 85-86. They had only 5 sellouts, their fewest since 84-85. The 38-year-old Civic Arena is the league's oldest building, though Lemieux has local politicians considering a new venue. And at some point that comes to a head, but not yet. And I'll likely just touch on that at the end of this video because there's some interesting stuff that goes on there. Now, this is after the 99-2000 season, so the idea was they're going to get there. And this one has Felix Potvin as a Canuck on the cover. That's how old this is. And no more check jokes, just wins and results. Because, during the season, Constantine got fired. So there were all kinds of talks about how Constantine didn't get along with Yager, and they downplayed it. Everything's fine. Fired Constantine after a slow start, brought in Herb Brooks. Herb Brooks guides them to 88 points at the end of the year, but Herb Brooks is done, so they bring in Ivan Halenka, thus the check jokes comment on here. and Holinka, things went pretty well in the beginning. The Pittsburgh Penguins lead the league in bad headlines with that play on the word check, C-Z-E-C-H. And the volume will only increase with the addition of coach Ivan Holinka. Check him out, check mark, check mates, checking in. The Penguins just hope the victories increase in proportion to the headlines. They finished at 500, their worst record since 89-90. And because, yeah, it was weird how they kept track of it. I know what I have up there, what they have here, it's weird. And for the second consecutive year, their season ended with a loss in the conference final. Holinka is the Penguins' third coach in a year, replacing Herb Brooks, who replaced Kevin Constantine. Holinka needs three-time defending scoring champion Jaromir Jagr to stay healthy, and needs his club to get better. Holinka is a stickler for defense. It'll be interesting to see how that plays on a team that sleeps, eats, and drinks offense. The Penguins top in the league in Europeans, 14 in the playoffs, including a busload of Czechs, 7 last season. So, the 99-2000 season, Jagr leads the way with 42 goals, 54 assists. Top guy, 96 points. Kovalev, 26 goals, 40 assists. Jean-Sébastien Aubin is their starting goalie. He's 23-21-3, 914 save percentage. They don't have a whole lot of faith in him, so they bring in Ron Tugnutt. Tugnutt goes 4-2 to end the regular season with a 924 save percentage. So in the playoffs, they went with Ron Tugnutt. He went 6-5 in those playoffs with a 945 save percentage. Not bad for Ron Tugnutt, right? Round 1, they knocked out the Capitals, because of course they did in 5. Second round, they lost to Philly in 6. So, 2000-2001, Holinka comes in. They're 42-28-9-3. They end up with 96 points. Pretty darn solid season all around. And Jagr has a much better season than the year before, even though the year before was pretty darn good. 52 goals, 69 assists, 121 points. Kovalev, 44 goals, 51 assists, 95 points. Mario Lemieux decides, I've had enough of just being an owner. I'm going to come out of retirement and play. Plays a total of 43 games because of his back issues. He won't be able to play a full schedule. 35 goals, 41 assists, 76 points. Not bad for an old guy with a bad back. This is why, when people talk about Lemieux being the greatest, I don't argue with them. I just say I think Gretzky was the greatest, but I understand why people would argue Lemieux was. Because with a bad back, he could still score 2 points a game. Jean-Sébastien Aubin that year, 2014 and 1, 890 save percentage, so he splits the starts with Garth Snow, who's 14-15-4 with a 900 save percentage. Yeah, so in the 2001 playoffs, Moose comes in. Who's Moose? Johan Hedberg. Hedberg comes in, called Moose because he comes up from the Manitoba Moose, has a Moose helmet, and they just leave it that way. So he's Moose for the rest of his career. And in the playoffs, he's pretty good. He gets a 9-9 record with a 911 save percentage. And the future looks really, really bright for Pittsburgh because now they got a good young goaltender. They have a really solid core around which to build. Lemieux, when he plays, is scoring at about 2 points a game. And in the first round, they beat Washington, of course, in 6. That's Olaf Kolzig he beat in the first round. Second round, they beat Buffalo in 7. That's Dominik Hasek he beats in the second round. Third round, they lose in 5 to the New Jersey Devils. That's Marty Brodeur that finally takes out Johan Hedberg. So expectations are really high for Hedberg going into the following season and for the Penguins. So how did it go? Well, no team has undergone more change than the Pittsburgh Penguins over the past 3 years. From the trauma of bankruptcy to the triumph of Mario Lemieux's comeback to the constant turmoil surrounding the team, Captain Jaromir Jagr, who was traded to Washington July 11th. The Penguins have produced enough sensational headlines to fill a New York Post warehouse. We didn't even mention they employ the first European coach to survive a season, or hoping for a new arena in 2005, and have the NHL's second longest playoff streak. Despite their mercurial nature, perhaps partly because of it, the Penguins are as consistently successful as any team. Need proof? They've qualified for the playoffs 11 straight years. That's about to change. Second only to the St. Louis Blues, who had 22 at the time. After the fourth longest playoff run in team history ended with a crushing loss to the New Jersey Devils in the conference final, the Penguins dealt Jagr, the 4-time defending scoring champion, for 3 prospects and future considerations. It seemed inevitable after a tumultuous playoff in which he managed just 2 goals and was criticized by Lemieux. The overriding factor though was Yager's contract, which had 2 years and $20.7 million remaining. So Yager was making over $10 million a year, and the Penguins were like, we can't afford to keep paying this. In order for the Penguins to make a profit, they had to make the playoffs. The truth is, they still have to make the playoffs. I was reading an interview with Ron Burkle from 2017 and researching this, and he said he factors in at least a run to the second round. And as long as they make the second round, the Penguins are a profitable team. So he factors that in any decisions he makes and any kind of money that they're going to spend. Is we're going to make at least the second round, therefore we'll end up in the black anyways. Look for the Penguins to head in a new direction, emphasizing more of a team game under coach Ivan Holinka. The thing is, the largely Czech team he was hired to coach has changed the makeup in the past year. Holinka's ability to adjust will be critical. And it was. And there's the moose mask for Johan Hedberg. And the beautiful Robo jersey, which is still in storage apparently. Because it's not on the set. It's not on the set. It's not here. It's still in storage. We're going to get that all cleaned out this weekend, though. But yeah, so the 01-02 Pittsburgh Penguins, it falls apart. Trading Yager was a huge mistake, but again, Lemieux had enough of them. And, I don't know, a guy who scores 121 points. But Lemieux's one of those few guys who can come out and say, I think he's lazy. He is one of the few people in the league who would be allowed to say it because he's Mario Lemieux. And he's the owner. So is it the player speaking that way or the owner? Anyways. 01-02, they finished with a 28-41, 8-5 record. That is abysmal. They end up with 69 points. Ivan Holinka, he lost 4 games. They lose all 4, and they bring in Rick Kehoe. Rick Kehoe might have been a good coach. We'll never know because this team was bad. The 01-02 Pittsburgh Penguins, their leading scorer is Andrei Kovalev, or Alexei Kovalev, I should say. 32 goals, 44 assists for 76 points. Lemieux only played 24 games. 6 goals, 25 assists, 31 points. Hedberg, he falls back to earth with 25, 34, and 7 record, 904 save percentage. So that's where the 01-02 season ends up. And, how long can the Pittsburgh Penguins stay tethered to the Mario Lemieux umbilical cord? See how it changes? See how it goes from, this is going to be great to, how long is this going to last? Nearly 2 decades after they drafted Lemieux and 5 years after his first retirement, the Penguins remain utterly dependent on number 66 for goals, victories, and fans, in short, for survival. This is not healthy, and neither is Lemieux, who has chronic back and hip injuries and who turns 37 in October. His absence in all but 24 games last season was the biggest factor in the Penguins missing the playoffs for the first time since 1990. So he was the Toby. They had their lowest point total in a long lockout season since 84-85, Lemieux's rookie year. So the 69 points was their lowest. It didn't help that Jaromir Jagr and his 5 scoring titles were in Washington, or that Martin Straka missed 69 games with a broken tibia. Yeah. Robert Lang and Alexei Kovalev missed a combined 35 games. The Penguins lost 330 man games overall. So that's a lot. That's a lot of man games to lose overall, and a lot of that's Lemieux as well. Second highest figure in the NHL. GM Craig Patrick believes a return to health will mean a return to the playoffs. Problem is he keeps losing his best players to the Capitals without much return. Lang, who was inexplicably retained at the trade deadline, joined Jagr in July as a free agent. And I remember that. They'll trade Lang, right, as a rental? No, they didn't. And so he just walked away, and they got nothing in return. So when I hear people talk about, Pittsburgh intentionally tanked to get Crosby, they really didn't. They really, really didn't. Those two are merely the latest Penguin payroll casualties. It seems clear the best way for a tight budget team to thrive these days, a la Carolina and Phoenix, is to develop players, make smart trades, sign the occasional free agent, play a strict system. The Penguins have fallen short on all these fronts, and without financial wherewithal to compensate, they should no longer be considered a serious Stanley Cup contender. They are comparing the Pittsburgh Penguins to the Coyotes and saying the Coyotes are doing it better. Is there anything that could be much worse of an insult for the Pittsburgh Penguins at this state? They're a decade removed from being Stanley Cup champions, and they're nowhere near Stanley Cup championship form. So what happens in 02-03? Well, Rick Kehoe coaches the entire season, but it's not a better season. They finished 27, 44, 6, and 5. So 6 ties, 5 overtime losses. So it's wins, losses, overtime, ties and overtime losses. 65 points overall is still the point here. And Rick Kehoe is your guy, but he doesn't last after the postseason. 02-03, the good news is Mario Lemieux plays most of the schedule, finishes with 28 goals, 63 assists, 91 points. The bad news is everything else. So despite him playing most of their games and being the number one scorer, Mario Lemieux doesn't get them to the playoffs. Kovalev, 27 goals, 37 assists, 64 points. He'll be on his way out soon. And Hedberg, 14, 22, and 4. He's their starting goaltender. .895 save percentage. His starting position is done after this season. So what happens here? Well, first off, the good news is we're getting into the Penguin that I have on the board here. And this is the Naslund years for the Canucks. So things are looking up for Vancouver and Pittsburgh. The difference is Pittsburgh's going to win the ultimate game in June, and Vancouver's not going to, but I digress. Pittsburgh's only option is to fashion a new identity of hard work and defensive focus, and that's their major problem here. This is a team that's just not good enough, and there's still the attempt being made to get better from within, and it's not going to work. The Pittsburgh Penguins are living proof that rock bottom beats rampant mediocrity any day. Back in 1984, the Penguins won the right to draft Mario Lemieux by finishing last overall. Lemieux, who will return for his 16th NHL season, remains the franchise cornerstone. In June, history repeated itself. After finishing second to last overall, the Penguins traded up for the right to draft celebrated French-Canadian prospect. This time it was Marc-Andre Fleury, who won't pay Mario Lemieux like dividends, of course, who would, but who gives the team a prospective franchise goaltender. So they've just drafted Marc-Andre Fleury. That's assuming there's a franchise. The biggest issue surrounding the Penguins is their fight for a new arena. Lemieux says that without hope, the team cannot, without a new one, the team cannot hope to stay in Pittsburgh past 2007 when its lease at 43-year-old Mellon Arena expires. In order to pay for their share of a new building, the Penguins were pinning hopes on slot machine revenue for a hoped-for horse track. Speaking of gambling, GM Craig Patrick hired his new coach right out of the broadcast booth. Erstwhile colorman and longtime NHL forward Eddie Olczyk replaces Rick Kehoe, who was one of several employees fired or reassigned in an organization-wide evaluation ordered by Lemieux after his team missed the playoffs for a second straight year and officially declared itself in a rebuilding mode. They don't even say, okay, we're in a rebuild until they've missed the playoffs twice. So again, and this is why it drives me nuts when I see people say, well, yeah, no, these teams have done rebuilds. Nobody ever officially, on purpose, falls into it. You just end up in it, and then halfway through you go, yeah, it's sort of like your house is in the midst of falling down, and just before it hits the ground, you go, gonna build a new house. It's new, gonna be a new house. Don't worry. Why'd the old one fall down? I meant for it to fall down. Yeah, all of that was on purpose. It's never on purpose. Patrick labeled it survival mode until there's a new collective bargaining agreement. The payroll likely will remain in the $20 million range for the entire team. The main attraction will be Lemieux, but this team no longer can be molded in his image. And Lemieux paid himself $1 million. He paid himself an extravagantly low amount. And there were fans that weren't happy at the time going, wait a minute, so because he's the owner, he can come out and play. And he's Mario Lemieux, and he can pay himself $1 million. That's not exactly market value for Mario Lemieux. It's time to forge a new identity, one of a young, relentless, defensively conscious club that opponents hate to play against. The Penguins say they have the NHL's best crop of prospects. They have ample opportunity to test that claim over the next few years. So, who are their prospects? Their prospects are Ryan Whitney, Brooks Orpik, Thomas Sorovi, Konstantin Koltsov, Shane Endicott, Colby Armstrong, Ross Lupischuk, Noah Welch, Ryan Malone, Matt Murley, and their number 1 draft pick was Marc-Andre Fleury. This is why when people say, well, we've got good prospects, this is why my answer to that's always, I've heard that before, because until they play at the NHL level, Konstantin Koltsov was thought to be a very, very good player. You haven't heard of him if you're under the age of, I'll say, 30. Or, unless you follow the KHL. So, this was after 02-03. We're bringing in Eddie Olczyk. We're going to have a new identity. And we're scraping together a $20 million payroll. And we're going to try to survive. 03-04, this is the last year before the... this is the year before the lockout. And I didn't go with the year after the lockout. Because to me, it's a completely different dynamic. In 03-04, they finished with 23 wins, 47 losses, 8 ties, and 4 overtime losses. 58 points under Eddie Olczyk. Olczyk's a great guy. Olczyk couldn't have come out of retirement and helped this team. Their leading scorer is Dick Tarnstrom, a defenseman. 16 goals and 36 assists for Dick. Lemieux only plays 10 games, 1 goal, 8 assists. Their starting goalie is Sebastian Caron, 9-24 and 5, 883 save percentage. Marc-Andre Fleury played about 20 games. He had a 4-14 and 2 record, 896 save percentage. And I remember the concern at the time was that they had rushed Marc-Andre Fleury to the NHL. That this was a bad idea to have Marc-Andre Fleury playing already behind this absolutely abysmal team. Fleury played well. The team in front of him was awful. And it was a long season for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And it looked pretty dark because this was a franchise that was losing a lot of money. And it was known that since Lemieux took over, they were losing money. They needed a new arena just to hope to break even. And they weren't doing really, really well in those negotiations either. Now, this is the last magazine we'll use for this because I'm up to the last season. And this is the Don Cherry. Why would Don Cherry be on the cover? Because they knew there was going to be a lockout. This is the 04-05 yearbook. This is the one that I very rarely, if ever, see anywhere because there was no hockey that season. Nothing. So what was the point of buying the yearbook? I bought the yearbook because A, I was an optimist. I thought maybe they'll salvage this. Maybe we'll have a season in January. And B, why not? Honestly, why not? Because it's definitely something that I'd been buying for years, and I felt like we want to document this if the season goes. This should absolutely be documented. I want to remember. So, going into that was a rough season, and it just kept getting worse for them. So let's take a look at the look of the Pittsburgh Penguins, who again have that new Penguin jersey with the old Penguin on the front. The race is on as Penguin fans wait eagerly to see which new ground is broken first, that of a new arena or a winning team. A new arena depends on Mario Lemieux's bid for a downtown slots parlor, so that a whole year nothing. Contending depends mostly on Lemieux's repaired hips and a maturation of a stable of promising youngsters. Late last season, some wondered if the Penguins would ever win again. They hit rock bottom with a franchise record 18-game losing streak that included an NHL record 14 consecutive home defeats. They didn't do this on purpose. They were just bad. Late last season, that's what you just read, Shannon. Watch it. But like 2 decades earlier, before Lemieux arrived, darkness begat light. The Penguins rebounded swiftly and dramatically to finish on a 12-5-3 run. It was the second best 20-game ending in a franchise history. We've laid the foundation, said sophomore coach Eddie Olczyk. Now we've got to take the next step. GM Craig Patrick likes his club's playoff chances after 3 consecutive bottom 5 finishes. That might be asking a bit much, and it is. But it's clear the Penguins have a boatload of talented young players, including 3 top 5 picks in the past 5 years. And with the signing of free agent right winger Mark Recchi, who instantly becomes the team's second best offensive weapon, it's just as clear things look much better now than they did a year ago. They selected Evgeny Malkin, number 1 overall. This skilled playmaker and puck handler has excellent hockey sense. He has an accurate shot and quick release, plays both finesse and physical. But their top 10 prospects, Ryan Whitney, Noah Welch, Chris Beach, who was one of the ones they acquired for Jaromir Jagr, Ben Eves, Colby Armstrong, Matt Murley, Michael Civic, Sergei Anshikov, Ryan Stone, and Ross Lupischuk. So it was not a tremendous, deep, talented franchise. And honestly, I don't know that it was on purpose. 2007, when the Mellon Arena lease ended, they very nearly pulled out and moved. Last moment, Pittsburgh saved the day. Kansas City was saying, hey, you need a place to play. We got this brand new arena here. Come to the Sprint Center. So they were offering the Pittsburgh Penguins to stay rent-free. And the Penguins almost went. They almost became Kansas City, just like before Mario took over. They almost became Portland. And, of course, Jim Balsley would have loved to move him to Hamilton. The Pittsburgh Penguins right now are a very stable franchise because Ron Burkle and Mario Lemieux are determined to keep it that way. They make a profit, as I said, if they make the playoffs and they go places in the playoffs, which motivates them to stay in contention. Because if they miss the playoffs, they lose money. The Pittsburgh Penguins are never going to be a big market, huge cash cow of a team. But with the success they've had with Sidney Crosby, with the Stanley Cups that have been won over the last decade, they're in a heck of a lot better position than they were back then. But again, this wasn't done on purpose. And a lot of it can be traced to losing Jagr. But I think if they had kept Jaromir Jagr, I don't think that it fixes the defense. I don't think it fixes the goaltending. And I don't think it would have reversed course. I think they still would have missed the playoffs. The problem they had was when they traded Jagr, they didn't get anything worth trading Jagr for. And that was the crime back then. But, while some of that is on Lemieux, got to give him full credit for saving the franchise for that second time. And he seems to keep saving the franchise in little different ways over the last 2 decades now. So there you go. The story of Mario Lemieux, the owner, and of that time that the Pittsburgh Penguins weren't very good. They were actually quite bad. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.